Hello, I'm Rani Prasad, and I'm a reporter from Whitney High School, and I'm with video choreographer
Noah Hilliker.
And today I'll be asking these factory workers and owners about questions about the Industrial Revolution.
I'm John Luca Casas, and I'm a factory owner.
I'm Nicholas David, and I'm a factory owner.
I'm Brandon Brown, and I'm a factory worker.
I'm Yvonne Dottam, and I'm a factory worker.
Can you describe the working conditions in the factory as a factory owner?
As an owner, this business is extremely profitable and not a lot of work. The working conditions for the workers are considerably good since they are being paid to work shifts in these factories.
I'm a worker from the industrial factory. As a worker, my experiences in the harsh factories have been extremely unpleasant. The factories are compact and there are many employees working at once, making the environment unhealthy. The machines produce horrid fumes that we breathe constantly, causing workers to be sick left and right.
In this picture, you can see the working conditions of the workers in the factory during the Industrial Revolution. The workers undergo lots of stress because they are overworked and overwhelmed from all the work the owners give them. These workers got sick from the amount of work they had to complete with their sometimes 12-hour shifts with continuous work with barely any breaks. During the Industrial Revolution, there was tons of pollution in the air, which made the air humid and hard to breathe, which made the workers drowsy. The poor sanitation also made it easier for the workers to receive diseases.
Can you guys describe the attitude of a typical factory worker?
I believe that the attitude of a factory worker is similar to the attitude of us owners. The workers work long shifts but get paid at the end, which is deserved. So their attitude should be almost positive every time.
I completely disagree with that, and I'm a worker from the industrial factory. As a worker, I look around and observe that the workers always have a frown on their face. Personally, I am upset with the conditions that we are given because we work hard to provide for our families. The owners make a lot of money, however, they don't try to make the conditions a little bit more sustainable, which is really upsetting. In the picture, you can see the attitude of a factory worker working on knitting something for the company. The working conditions that they were given were extremely horrendous, which made the factory workers' life miserable during work. The workers would go home extremely tired from working, and it made them hate their job. The workers did not look forward to going to work, which caused a lack in production. They would sit in their designated spots for hours on hours at times. Due to the environment they were provided with, all the workers had a frowny look on their face, as shown in the picture.
Describe the life of men, women, and children who worked in the factory.
The life of men, women, and children who worked in the factories were considerably well. They worked long shifts at the factory, but this got them paid. This is a great way to make a living during these rough times.
We disagree with that statement. Men worked in the labor part in the factories, but they were paid a lot more than children and women. Men were way more expensive. The women workers were more preferred to work in factories. They also adapted to machines, and they were way cheaper than men. For the children, however, they manufactured things such as cloth and coal mining. They were also paid the low wages like the women.
Here, you can see a woman working long shifts on the factory on her feet. Factory owners preferred women and children to work for them because they could pay almost a third of the salary of a man. This made the owners and company much more profitable. The woman did the same job as the men, which was sitting next to machines and making products. Kids were also preferred because they had smaller hands and it was much easier for them to access things. There was no real purpose for hiring men at the time because owners could easily hire women for the third of the price that they would give to a man. This photo is revealing how the kids had to dig through the rigid coal mines. Keep in mind that these kids' aged varied from about 6 to even 12. The amount of work that these kids were handed tells you by itself how unjust the system that went around the Industrial Revolution really was. Factory owners paid them 1 cent per hour. The children were also used to replace machine parts because it was much easier for them to do. Can you describe the economic benefits of being a factory owner?
Being an owner of a factory, especially during the Industrial Revolution, allowed certain economic benefits such as living in better conditions, having better food to eat, and being in the upper class.
This image is demonstrating the lives that the factory owners lived. It is conveying that the factory owner's life was honestly great and how they didn't have to worry about things financially. While they are living their lives happily, their workers' lives are stressed and depressing. It is demonstrating that how even though the factory owner has a lot of money, he still doesn't care enough to appropriately compensate for the employees or making the factory conditions better.
Why might a factory worker consider a factory owner a bad person?
Me as an owner, I believe that my workers appreciate me because I'm giving them a great opportunity and I am appropriately compensating for each and every one of them.
I completely disagree with this statement. As a worker, our factory owners have no regards to human life. They fail to appropriately compensate any of us and expect us to perform highly when in extreme poor working conditions. We are placed in poorly sanitized areas that cause high rates of sickness and disease, which convey how the owners don't care about the employees' health.
This drawing is portraying how controlling the factory owner really is. The photo is indicating how the owners force the workers into going into the factories because the workers have no choice not to. The workers only worked because this was their only way to provide for their families. The portrait is expressing how the owners have no regard to these human lives and how they only see the financial part of things. None of these factory owners' principles were effective nor ethical whatsoever.
Why would a factory worker be more likely to be a pro-communist or anti-capitalist?
As a factory worker in the 1900s, I am an anti-capitalist because it ignores people's needs and it results in wealth inequality. Capitalism does not promote equal opportunity, which causes the system to be unstable and ineffective. Meanwhile, communism helps people who are financially in need, which are most people during this time. This photo is showing the choices that a factory worker has, whether to be an anti-capitalist and pro-communist, or being a pro-capitalist and anti-communist. The worker has chosen pro-communist because he believes that pro-communist helps people in the same situation as him. Pro-communist is better for workers because they would prefer a fair share of money rather than doing the same amount of work while the owner keeps a majority of the profits.
Why would a factory owner be likely to be a capitalist?
As a factory owner, I would prefer to be a capitalist because making and selling products while also being able to keep majority of the profits would make me extremely wealthy, considering I don't have to pay my workers a great amount and can get so much work from them.
In this picture, you can see a wealthy factory owner who is very money hungry. He knows that being a pro-capitalist, also known as anti-communist, is better for his situation because pro-communist would mean that he has to equally distribute the money throughout his employees. It is much more beneficial for the owner to pay his workers for what they worked for rather than equally distributing it because they would have to pay extra money to the workers, which would then make the company much more less profitable.
What risks would a typical factory owner take in owning and running a factory during the Industrial Revolution?
There are some risks that I had to take in order to own and run a factory. For instance, I am risking several employees' lives due to the factories carrying harmful diseases. I also knew that I would receive tons of backlash from everyone about pay, sanitation, and letting children work.
In this picture, you can see a factory owner taking a risk by making young children work for him in the factory for very long hours. This is also known as child labor. This owner is risking these children's lives because they are capable of doing tasks that adults cannot complete due to them being much larger. You can also observe how the walls and windows are poorly sanitized, which is another risk that the owner is putting amongst these workers.
Why is unskilled labor cheap, and why would you prefer this during the Industrial Revolution?
I'm paying these workers to accomplish basic tasks that almost anyone can complete. Most of these tasks require no skills, so I should not have to pay a lot for this labor. I do not understand why they expect me to pay them so much.
This photo is conveying how the workers are paid for the difficulty of their work. Due to the fact that the work is undifficult and requires not a lot of skill, the owners don't have to pay them that much money. The owner would prefer unskilled labor, especially during the Industrial Revolution, would be because the cheaper the labor, the more the owner can afford to bring in more workers. Explain how a typical factory owner decided how much to pay his employees and why during the Industrial Revolution.
There were a lot of people working, and so they paid them less so that they wouldn't lose as much as money. During the IR, there were a lot of people that needed jobs, so they needed to pay them cheap but still get labor out of it.
This illustrated drawing is conveying how the factory owners are paying the workers small amounts of money for their hard work and dedication to this company. They pay small amounts of money because they know the job market is high, which means that it is very easy to find a job. The lady in the drawing has a fake smile on her face while she was cleaning the factory in order to please the owner for more money. In the Industrial Revolution, the workers were trying their best in order to provide for their families. However, the selfish owners made it extremely difficult to do so by not compensating them appropriately. This is very similar to real-world problems today involving the minimum wage and by company managers not paying their employees that much. The minimum wage is a bare standard, which companies abuse by paying the workers the minimum allowed. During the IR, child labor was a major problem that needed to be fixed. Back then, there were no rights protecting children from rough jobs like stated. The children had no choice but to obey. Due to the IR, there are several rights that are in place today to protect children from going through the same struggles. If the IR was never a thing, who knows what the child laws would be today.